Welcome in to the Paul Kuharsky podcast, live from Edley's at 12 South. Booming today with people probably having an easier day from work, unfortunately, because of the ice and the storm. Still some trees down around here that cut things to one lane on my way over. Will Newman of Edley's doing a tremendous thing for people without power and for line workers. You're invited to any of the Middle Tennessee Edleys to stop in and get a free barbecued pork sandwich. Great gesture by Will Edley. It is warm in here as well, and so those line workers and people without power are certainly welcome to stop by any of the Edley's barbecue restaurants around town and warm up and have something to eat. So Edley's Barbecue, always doing the right thing and providing some great food in and around Nashville. I encourage you to take advantage of that if you're in position of need. If you're not in position of need, come by, unwind from what you've been enduring in and around town. Grab a beer, grab a drink, grab some barbecue, and have a good time. I'm Paul Kuharsky, paulkuharsky.com. Best Titans coverage around. Been doing pretty well, I have to say, on coach putting his staff together. Reported this morning Robert Saleh's staff is going to include a nickel coach. That means 3 coaches for the secondary: a cornerback coach, a safeties coach. Cornerback coach we know is Tony Oden, and a nickel coach. It's quite something considering the Titans did not split the secondary into corners and safeties until, I believe, 2020, when Kerry Combs left Mike Vrabel's staff after 2 years to go back to Ohio State. And then he had Anthony Midget as a secondaries coach and Scott Booker as the safeties coach. So that's an interesting thing. You're only going to have so many nickel corners on a team, nickel corners and safeties who play nickel. But that direct a focus on that position tells you just how important that position has become in the league. So it'll be interesting to see that. Chicago has a dedicated nickels coach. Dallas has one. Philadelphia has had one. But Robert Saleh is going to be on the front end of that trend, which is an interesting development. Going to roll through some of your questions here to start, and then we will talk quickly about Cam Ward. Good to see you guys. Feel free to retweet, spread the word that we are here. Are we expecting a bigger name at pass game coordinator that could be part of the offensive coordinator replacement plan? I don't think so. I think Brian Daboll, there are budgetary constraints here as well. Brian Daboll's going to be making a good salary as offensive coordinator. Shea Tierney is the quarterback coach. Greg Lewis, the wide receivers coach. Luke Stalker, the tight end coach. I think all of those guys would be potentially in the succession plan. I think you'd hope that Daboll, look, if the Titans are so good in the first year that Brian Daboll has a head coaching offer, that would be great news for the Titans. Hope you get 2 years out of them. And look, it's a time for excitement. There's a lot to like about Robert Saleh, about Brian Daboll. Got to hold yourself in check a little bit. Both these guys had not just losing records, but significant trouble winning at the NFL record as head coaches. Now, circumstances should be better for both of them. Promising young quarterback they both like. Mike Borgonzi seems to get it. Ownership seems to have settled down. It's January, the season of hope and all of that. And that succession question I asked, it's a significant part of things because we saw Vrabel after LaFleur, after Art Smith, have trouble when they got to Todd Downing and when they got to Tim Kelly. So it's important. But I don't think there's going to be a passing game coordinator that just has passing game coordinator title. Greg Lewis could have it, or the offensive line coach, Brasillo, could have it. It's more likely he's run game coordinator. So there's not going to be somebody, I don't think, who's just passing game coordinator and it does not have another piece to his title. Now, I'm not going to put the question up here, but somebody talking, Lebanese coach versus Jewish coach getting into it after the game. I don't think there's any Middle Eastern cultural things between Robert Saleh and Liam Cohn. I think they're football things between them. So let's not rush to make things bigger than they are. I think there were indications that one of them said that he knew, what he was up to, and he took it as an indication that he was stealing signals or doing research on that level. The other one didn't like it. It's a football rivalry, not a political rivalry, and there's no reason for us to expand it from one to the other. So I would be very wary of taking it there, and that's about all I'm going to have to say about that.
I wish I was that good.
Jason thanks me for questioning at the press conference. It's a press conference. I'm a reporter. It's what we do. Sorry, if you're listening to this on Apple, on Spotify, on iHeart, I should mention this more often. We do this. Its first iteration is as a live broadcast on YouTube, on Facebook, on X. And so the pauses are me getting to listener questions, which is the bulk of these broadcasts at time like this. So it might not make for the most natural audio broadcast, but the information is ultimately good. Adam says it's nice to have what looks to be a competent staff. Again, the staff looks pretty good so far. Asked here by Adam, what do I know about the offensive line coach? Story coming soon on Carmen Brasillo. The lead will be a longtime scout that I've known, always liked going to Youngstown State from I think 2010 to 2018 when Brasillo was coaching Youngstown State. Low-ranking school, right? But he loved going there and talking to Carmen about technique and seeing his guys who, 3 of them became undrafted rookie free agents. 1 of them played 7 games for the Raiders. You're not generally finding NFL talent there, but he knew this guy was a really good coach, technically sound coach, had a bright future ahead of him. It was interesting. And I've talked now to Saleh about him. I've talked to somebody who coached with him. Talked to Corey Levin, who was with him for just a week in New England. And that story, I think, will come out later today. So stay tuned to paulkuharsky.com. It's a good reason to be a member. I'm sorry some of you waited a little bit for a little bit of a late start. Avocado salad again. I don't know what I'm going to eat today, to be honest with you. Since coaches report Monday, do I think the defensive coaches will be hired before then? I don't think the staff will be complete on Monday. I think there's enough to start with there, obviously. I have a very good sense of what's going on at defensive coordinator, and it's contingent on some things that are going on elsewhere in the league. He can't accelerate what goes on elsewhere, And for Dayball, that things were contingent on what went on with at least one other team in the league. Titans have no control what goes on in Buffalo, for example, and so they wait. But that's a good and fair question. What's up with the Belichick snub? Look, I'm on record. I voted for Bill Belichick. I think it's ridiculous that he's not in. There was some discussion about the ways he might not get in, and some of us, I certainly said, I talked about one path I saw for him not getting in and tried to encourage us not to fall into that path. I think that was part of how he didn't get in, not all of why he didn't get in. I've read Mike Chappell, I've read Vague Groyan from Kansas City and their rationale for not voting for him. I think it's important that people understand you don't vote against somebody ever in the process. You vote for somebody, and these guys voted for somebody. They didn't vote against Bill Belichick. but he's a first ballot Hall of Famer by absolutely every measure, and we collectively blew it. Now the process is not good. That we're voting for a coach and an owner who are clear Hall of Famers against 3 players who are getting really probably one final chance, and many find those players worthy. And I think almost all of us lean players over coaches and executives, but it's very difficult. I'm not going to be surprised if Kraft doesn't get in either, because I think a lot of people will have voted for Kraft or for Belichick. And that's why I think it would be healthy if we could have more of a conversation to try to like rally towards, and I'm not saying have a campaign, but say like, let's try to do this year and do that next year. And if a lot of us would do it, then we could have kind of a systematic thing and get the people who need to be in, and also give consideration to these guys who are just going to make flash appearances on the ballot, who are very worthy candidates. I mean, Roger Craig, most people are surprised it's not in the Hall of Fame. L.C. Greenwood's a worthy candidate. I'm not a big Ken Anderson guy, but he's a worthy candidate. And so, look, it's a mess. And I think we deserve criticism. I'll take my share of criticism, but I voted for him, but I'm part of the process. I think the Hall deserves criticism for the setup of the voting. Certainly the 11 or more people who didn't vote for him deserve criticism, whether they're eloquently explaining why they didn't vote for him or not. And there are things to be fixed. And I'll take some more questions on this, be as transparent as I can, though there are limitations to what I can say. But I will correct the record. I mean, Bill Polian did not say what it was reported that he said in terms of Belichick needing to serve a year of penance. I don't remember him saying that. Other colleagues have said they don't remember him saying that. My private conversations with other colleagues on the committee, we don't collectively remember him saying that. But I think it's also ridiculous that he initially says he doesn't remember who he voted for, and then that the Hall goes and checks his vote. I don't know that the Hall would go and check my vote. No, I'm not a Hall of Famer, so maybe he gets a different level of support from the Hall. I have meticulous records of who I voted for and screenshots of the online ballot that I submit stage by stage, and I would imagine that everybody does, and certainly everybody should. Yeah, Tall Texan has this. Why is it that media members vote for the Hall of Fame? Look, we're professional observers of the game over a long time. We have no alliances to players or to teams. Mike Sando has been very eloquent on this. Players and coaches are much more likely to hold grudges. They remember specific games. Oh, in 2004, that guy did this, and are much more likely, consciously or subconsciously, to hold grudges. And so the Hall of Fame process long ago decided that chroniclers of the game were the people to make these judgments and make these cases. There are 4 Hall of Famers on the committee. There are also 4 Hall of Famers who are in the media: James Lofton, Dan Fouts, Bill Polian, and Tony Dungy. The idea that Hall of Famers are more equipped to evaluate Hall of Famers, I think you could punch holes in that. A lot of them don't want a lot of guys in the Hall of Fame because they're in an exclusive club and they want it to remain super exclusive. They aren't professional football watchers. And I've talked to many Hall of Famers asking them about guys that I'm trying to judge, and they say, I don't know. I don't watch. I'm not familiar with that guy on a game-to-game basis by any means. So I'm not saying that the Hall of Famers are universally not equipped, and I'm not saying that writers are universally equipped, but there's certainly a rationale to say reporters who, are are not rooting for anyone and don't have a stake in it, and whose job is historically to be detached observers, have a there's a good rationale for them to be the people who make cases for, pick apart cases for the Hall of Fame. Is Amy actively cheering for the Seahawks next week? I would imagine so. I thought Jim Wyatt was talking to Amy about the weather here and in Texas, and I got involved in that conversation a little bit while we were waiting on Robert Saleh at the beginning of the press conference. Here's an active thing. Like a previous GM holding a grudge from getting regularly pants by Belichick, or here Deion Sanders didn't know who Kevin Byard was, he's not a fan, or Deion Sanders isn't satisfied with being in the Hall of Fame. He thinks that there should be an upper room of the Hall of Fame, for the super elite of the Hall of Fame. I think that's awfully elitist. Also, I think, I think the revised Hall of Fame format to make it more difficult to get in, which is not for me to decide. It's for the Hall of Fame to decide. But it sure seemed like Deion Sanders saying it was too easy to get in had a bearing on that. And then I think Deion Sanders complained last year when not enough guys got in. So they got flip-flopping. And is logical thinking Deion Sanders' MO? I'm not saying every writer is a logical thinker. But is it part of Deion Sanders' job description to be a logical thinker? No. Is it part of the job description of a writer? I'm not saying everybody achieves it, but I would take the logical thinking of Mike Sando over the logical thinking of Deion Sanders every time. Belichick would absolutely be in that upper room, but I think it's ridiculous. Just 350, 380 Hall of Famers, and we need to divide that group? That's not elite enough? It's the most elite Hall of Fame of the major sports, period. Listen, William, Bruce Springsteen can sing about whatever the fuck he wants. That's an American principle. You can object to it, but you can't. And you could tell him, don't sing about Minneapolis. And that's the end of it. He can sing about what the fuck he wants. You can complain about what the fuck he wants. But why do you get so worked up about it? Like, protest music is an American thing. That you have trouble coming to terms with that bothers me a lot more than anybody singing about anything. And I'm here to go on the record. I'm not in favor of the American government shooting anybody. Period. So if that loses me, tough for me. Players play the game. Yeah, it's correct. Players play the game. They don't watch the game. They don't in the same way. They're not watching the whole league every week. They're watching their opponent every week. They're not. I'm not saying they shouldn't be involved in the voting process. I'm telling you the rationale for them not being. They don't regularly talk to other players in the league. They don't regularly interact during the season with players on other teams in the league, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I have not yet gotten to ask Saleh about game management and who he'll have up in the box and all of that. If he has a stretch type guy, if he will inherit the stretch type guy, Rob Reederer, who was not very good at the job for Brian Callahan or Mike McCoy, I don't think so. And Adam says he likes, whoops, I didn't click on that. Adam says he likes that it's harder to get in the Hall of Fame. That's fine. But when this year's class is going to be like, is Marshall Yonda a Hall of Famer? I think Marshall Yonda is a phenomenal guard, one of the best guards of his generation. He's going to have a very hard time to get in. Reggie Wayne and Torrey Holt, are they Hall of Famers? Larry Fitzgerald's going to hop those two guys. I think we all expect. He's going to get in this year. I think we all expect. And those two guys who were on the verge of getting into the Hall of Fame under the old voting rules look now like they're going to get left behind in the new voting rules. Is that good or bad? I don't know. Are they Hall of Famers? They feel like they're right there to me. So I think we're going to see Drew Brees get in and Fitzgerald get in, and I don't know what's going to happen beyond that. Amy and Burke watching the CRA says is a reminder of how brutal their options are. Will Newman in the house. Is a reminder of how brutal their opinions are with the hiring of good coaches. You fire one who's in the Super Bowl, didn't hire the other, instead chose Callahan over McDonald. Yeah. I mean, they made some bad choices. All you can do as a Titans fan is hope that the bad choice era is over and that a good choice era has come in. And look, they're not the only team that misses. There is a bit of a crapshoot mentality to coaching hires. There aren't 10 coaches hired this cycle, or 10 coach openings this cycle by accident. I mean, the whole league, a third of the league is turning over. Now, some of them foolishly, and the Titans not so foolishly. Let's talk about the plan for Cam Ward, and I wrote about this off of the press conference, and I'm fascinated by this. Robert Saleh, when he started with the Jets, started with Mike LaFleur, Matt LaFleur's brother, and they're connected to the Kyle Shanahan offense. And you would think that Saleh, and then they went to Nathaniel Hackett and Aaron Rodgers, and that's an offense unto itself, right? Which is really relying on Aaron Rodgers doing what Aaron Rodgers does. But Saleh spent 5 years working for Shanahan, and it was kind of a logical assumption, I thought, to assume he'd go that direction again. Brian Daboll does not take him that direction again. This is an Perkins system. And so the Shanahan offense is variants of wide zone, and it's built on rhythm, motion, play action, and creating space. Now, the Perkins system is built more on shared concepts, option routes, more than fixed route trees. It requires communication, recognition, quarterback command, and regular adjustments. It's a thing where everybody's got to be on the same page. Why did Saleh want to go this direction? Well, he said as a defensive coach, they prepared for the Shanahan offense all the time because he said 80 to 90% of NFL offenses are variants of this Shanahan offense. When you get ready for the Tennessee Titans offense, you're going to have to do something different. It's going to be a new week. And then I'll quote him. He said about Brian Daboll, as a defensive guy, game planning against him, what he does, I can tell you that he's always going to strain you, both run and pass. He's going to find the run-pass conflicts within your scheme for individual players. He's going to attack the shit out of it. He's special in that regard. I think this is really interesting. The idea that the Titans are going to be different than what you're getting ready for every week, that they're going to put your weak people under strain, and that it's going to be difficult to get ready for you because you're going to be largely uncommon. That sounds great for Cam Ward. A decent amount of responsibility on Cam Ward here and his pass targets in terms of the option routes, being on the same page, reading things the same way. But he also talked about, for a young quarterback, have to ask him not to be Superman. Support him with the strong defense, support him with a good run game, and let things around him support him as he grows and gets good. And that's common philosophy amongst the smart coaches and regimes in the league. And so that's what the Titans are going to strive for on offense. Sean says, base nothing on the Hackett and Aaron time. The Jets or a joke of a franchise who forced that on Saleh. And I think he is largely getting a pass on that section of time. The Jets' dysfunction is largely excused when considering Saleh's second head coaching chance. The new offensive system, Ed Henry says, sounds great until they have tape on you and then the defense adjusts. Certainly true. But you have to win some plays, head up, win some one-on-ones, have some big plays from your quarterback, steadily run the ball, which we've seen this team do. Do these hires change my draft perception? Well, we knew when they hired Saleh that the defense was going to be different, that we'd be talking more ends than edges in a lot of ways, that they need to rush the passer without blitz help, which is something the Titans needed to work towards anyway. And so the holes on defense are still the same. They're going to hire a nickel coach. They don't have a nickel. I mean, Marcus Harris might be their nickel, but they don't have cornerbacks really. It's an empty, largely empty room where the guys they have are 4s, 5s, and 6s, not 1s, 2s, and 3s. There's not a ton to work with. I said earlier, extension cord Floyd is asking about the timing of the defensive coordinator. I know where they're headed, and things are contingent on some other things that are happening around the league. Do I think that Reese is a good consolation prize if Bain is gone by 4? Or would I prefer a wide receiver at 4 if Bain is gone? I'd prefer a trade down in Bailey. But I'm not positive yet. I think Bain is a better fit for this than he would have been for the defense that they had previously. They want to play as wide as 9. You wouldn't put Bain out at 9, but you could put Bain at relatively wide at 7 outside the tight end. Still concerned about the arms. I'd really like them to get somebody at 4 that had no question marks. And Bain has a question mark with the arms. And, Tate has a question mark with the not a totally complete receiver. Doesn't have that off-the-chart speed that you would want. See, Focus wants to trade down and Lemon, and he's not a completely complete receiver either. It's a very unfortunate thing that it's not a great draft, and the Titans with their major needs as a pass rusher, end/edge, wide receiver, cornerback. You would love, if you're picking at 4 or inside the top 10, to get a guy who seems like a guarantee at one of those positions. And it doesn't look like there is going to be a guarantee. And that seems unfortunate. Let's retweet out there if we can, stir up the crowd a little bit. I'm Paul Kuharsky of paulkuharsky.com, covering the Titans since 1996. For the price of a cup of coffee, you can get all of my coverage, analytics analysis from Mike Herndon, film study from Drew Beatty, draft preview from Braden Gall and Blake Bedingfield, and much, much more, including text messages alerting you to when these podcasts are going live. All that and support of the best independent journalism on the Titans. Please consider. After drafting 2 wide receivers in last year's draft, the Titans should not add another young wide receiver when they have so many other holes, Nick says. I disagree with that entirely. That you drafted 2 young wide receivers doesn't answer the wide receiver problem, because the 2 young wide receivers you drafted are 4th-round wide receivers. And in the 4th round, you only get so much talent. And why Chim DK and Alec Manor look like they'll be good players, they're not going to be number 1 wide receivers in the league. And only if, Chim DK's career goes perfectly would he be a number 2. And he's certainly not going to be a number 2 in 2026. Titans need to go get those guys. And where you get those guys, maybe you hit a home run in free agency with Alec Pierce, or you get somebody like Romeo Dobbs or Jawan Jennings that can contend for 2-3 on your roster. But where you find a number one wide receiver is high in the draft. And if you look around the league at number one receivers, where did Jackson Smith and Jigba, who's a key to Seattle in the Super Bowl, come from? Came from high in the first round, where a lot of people would have liked for him to have been a consideration, I think, in the Peter Skoronski draft. And so you can't say, well, they have wide receivers. Well, sure. They've got fourth rounders. They've got Bryce Oliver. They've got Calvin Ridley, who they might give up on. But they need a premier wide receiver, and premier wide receivers come from high in the draft. They need a premier pass rusher. Premier pass rushers come from high in the draft. They need a premier cornerback. Premier cornerbacks come from high in the draft. Those are the three positions of the biggest concern, and they need to address 2 out of 3 of them with their first 2 picks. And ideally, they'd trade back, get more high picks, and address all of them high. But don't think that the Titans are fine at wide receiver. That is a very Titan-esque thinking. That's what the Titans historically have wanted you to think. Oh, they're good. They got Byron Ely. They got Trey McBride. Titans are fine at wide receiver. No. Yeah, it can't pre-prescribe. Jolly says, what do I think about first round wide receiver and second round Mesidor, the other edge from Miami? Can't pre-prescribe it. Can't say first round wide receiver without knowing who the first round wide receiver is and without knowing who's gone. Carnell Tate is the most likely guy at 4. I like him. I don't love him. I don't think he's the 4th pick in the draft in most drafts. I can't pre-prescribe what's going on. My ideal scenario is they trade down, and get one of these guys we're talking about at 9 or 10. Now, what the market is for pick number 4, I don't know. What you need is for the second or third best cornerback to become a hot property. Am I in favor of cutting Ridley to avoid too high salaries at Rodgers? I don't really care that much about salaries. Titans are in great financial shape. Calvin Ridley, a good player who, had chemistry with Cam. He's starting to slow down. He's not the most reliable in terms of being in the right place. I want Daboll's assessment, Lewis's assessment of Calvin Ridley. The Titans have not decided by any means that he's gone. And so we'll see. But if I could have Alec Pierce and a first and second round draft pick added to this, I'd rather that. Do I think they need to overpay to get off 4? It's way too early to say. But the consensus seems to be that there are 12 or 14, or what's the number? Somebody correct me on the number. First round picks in this draft. So I think they'd only go so low. I mean, they have to have one of the guys that's universally regarded as a first round pick in this draft. They can't be picking second round caliber guy at 13 or 16 or something like that. Ed says, nice work getting my name out there 3 times in the opening presser. I asked 5 questions, I think. I mean, at a certain point, it looked like nobody else was going to ask questions, and I had plenty of questions. So I'm not going to stop. But it's not my objection to get. It's not my objective to get my name out there. It's my objective to get Saleh to talk about some stuff. Kush likely played his way into staying, right? Adam asks. I think so. Continuity seemed to go pretty well. What's your alternative at center? There's one really good free agent coming from Baltimore, but he probably gets re-signed. Carmen Brasillo has a reputation for getting really good play out of average guys, and Dan Moore fits that. Lloyd Cushenberry might fit that. And so, if those are the kind of guys that he gets to be really good or to play well, then more power to him. Look like I'm in parking trouble. Bear with me a second here. Gonna get myself a parking ticket. You don't want that. My validation has been applied. Has it been applied too late? Don't forget your parking validation like when you're halfway through. That's a bad form. It's what I call bad form. I tell my students at Belmont all the time, good form and bad form. I recorded a class on Wednesday night, about an hour and 15 minutes, that I gave them to watch during while I was at the Titans all day yesterday. And I dropped something 3/4 of the way through. I told them, if you don't watch this class, you won't give me something I ask for during your class, and it'll hurt you. Your next discussion board, you'll start with 2 points instead of 5 points. And so I was periodically pulling stuff off my bureau and showing them pictures or trinkets from my office and telling stories to kind of throw in some stuff off topic, keep them alert and whatnot. So I showed a picture of my recently deceased dog, died in the last year, Finley at 17. Told a story about Finley or whatever, and told them they had to send me an email with Finley in the subject line, or they'd be docked these points on their next discussion board. So my email box is just filled now with emails with the subject line, Finley, 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 Finley. No need for any of you to do that. That is not required. I see your attendance here and do not require such a thing. But thank you for your consideration. I am reposting this tweet right now. Let's go through the press conference a little bit here and some things. Again, I'm at Edley's Barbecue in 12 South. Will Newman is here. I was hoping he would stop by. Come to Edley's if you have no power, or if you're working online crews trying to restore power. Get a free barbecue pork sandwich. Will's trying to help out the community. He's a great community guy. I'm proud to be connected to Edley's, which has sponsored this podcast for a few years now. He's a terrific guy. It's terrific food here. I rave about it all the time. Ryan's behind the bar here. She always takes care of me with my Diet Coke with the lemon, and I often stay to eat after. Terrific hot food, great portions, reasonable prices, incredible hospitality. You can see it's bustling today. I think a lot of people are done with work early, or just done with their week period, coming out to have some good food and a drink and to head into the weekend. Our first football this weekend for a long time as we await the Super Bowl. But Edley's Barbecue, I'm at 12 South. My home base is Berry Farms. There's one Franklin in the Factory, Gallatin, Hermitage, all over the place. Not going to find a better meal around Nashville at the price point of Edley's Barbecue. And again, if you're without power, or if you're helping people get power back, stop by and have a free barbecue pork sandwich on Will Newman and the crew at Edley's. We know people are having a hard time out there, and people are doing God's work, helping the people who are having a hard time out there, and Will's trying to do his little bit to help out. It's a great gesture on his behalf. We appreciate it. So back to some things we learned from Robert Saleh yesterday. What this team wants to be, what he wants it to be in terms of identity. Fast, violent, confident, great buzzwords. Speed, physicality, swagger should show up on every snap. Like that. Dayball. This offensive coordinator is basically a head coach offense, right? Full autonomy over the offense and the scheme, though certainly the head coach has input. Emphasis on communication and unity. Those are good things. Offense, defense, special teams, one team. 3 units, one team. Why he wants to call plays as a second-time head coach, which he did not do when he was with the Jets. He felt disconnected. And connection with players is one of his biggest things. It's biggest strength, and something that he really wants to have this part. He wants to feel the strain and the impact of his decisions. And he felt like at times with the Jets, he was just a guy who called timeouts and threw red flags. Now, that's a little disheartening, because as a CEO head coach, you should feel a lot more important than that, whether you're not calling plays or not. But obviously, this connection element is very important to him. He's a very, very successful defensive play caller. And I think the Titans could look at that. How quickly can the Titans get good on defense? Look, he can make a difference with the scheme and with his staff, with Jeffrey Simmons and a couple other pieces. Cedric Gray stands to benefit largely here. But the Titans need talent. They don't have any cornerbacks of note. Their safeties aren't fast. I would think that Cody Barton is an odd man out here. You're playing a 4-3, and so there aren't two inside linebackers anymore. Those outside linebackers in a 4-3 are different than what Cody Barton is. And so it could take some time in terms of the talent addition element there. But the guys he has out there are going to know what they're doing and have some skill at it. Talked about the offense, coaching identity, focused on alignment and winning on Sunday's leadership style, authenticity and honesty. Those are Mike Vrabel hallmarks, and we knew they were heading back when they made this hire to that kind of style. Said players want clarity. They want accountability. They want the truth. Stressed caring about the players beyond football. This is Vrabel again. Connection requires work outside the film room, outside the meeting room. This is Vrabel again. We remember Vrabel talking about, if you need to be late for work because you got family stuff going on, all you got to do is give me a call. Put a premium on that. Just put a premium on that. New England certainly helped the Patriots build the Super Bowl team in very short order in Mike's first year there. He said he did extensive research on the organization and suggests that he studied the Titans as much as the Titans studied him. I'm going to write about this. Like, how much research could he really do on Amy Adams Strunk? Her resume and what she's known, but just by us, to have done behind the scenes here, and the answers that he will have gotten from people like not just Mike Vrabel, but Ryan Cowden and Monty Ossenfort and scouts who have left, and Rand Carthon, who I don't know how accurate a narrator he would be, and Brian Callahan, and guys on the staff who might have been willing to talk to him before it was established whether they would be on the staff or not. I'm going to write a little bit more about this, but he praised the ownership, the leadership structure. We had a on-the-record session with him off camera afterwards, and he talked about being convinced that she wants to start over in a new, fresh way, and kind of shed, I don't know if he used the word reputation, but paraphrasing, I think it's accurate, shed the reputation, start anew, get away from the things that have been wrong, fresh ownership tone, all of those things. Said people stood out at every level. I think that's, starts with the guys who are on that committee. So the Borgonzi, first and foremost, Brinker, Reggie McKenzie, Dave Ziegler, Saganey, the executive committee. Burke Nihill factors in there to some degree, though he's less involved in this than he's been in virtually everything that they've done. Borgonzi said that Saleh matched all the leadership characteristics. He praised his presence, his preparation, his organization. Is that Edward? How we doing? Let's have lunch. I'm done in 10 or 20 minutes. Praised his presence, preparation, organization, highlighted emphasis on player development, repeated that he's a high character guy. Succession planning and coaching development, really talked about developing coaches the same way develops players, having a plan in place for that. People did not like this about Mike Vrabel, and Mike Vrabel never spoke as candidly as Saleh did at this press conference, but that was his plan. And people thought, that Vrabel brought in Downing, first off, that they were big buddies. He didn't know Todd Downing before he hired Todd Downing, but he hired Todd Downing to replace Arthur Smith with the intention of developing Todd Downing and bringing him in probably as the offensive coordinator if he lost Smith. Now, that didn't go well, but that was his plan. And it sounds like Saleh has the same kind of plan. And you would expect, based on what Saleh said, that he will have guys in-house and promote guys from in his own pipeline rather than looking outside immediately if and when he loses people. He said repeatedly, themes like culture starts with people and character. This all gas, no brakes remains his mantra. I tried to get him, he's had several mantras, tried to get him to provide a new mantra. What's next was one of those. So I asked him what's next, but he didn't have a new one at the ready yet. So in terms of what words are going on the walls, which is always a big thing around a team facility, maybe it'll be all gas, no brakes. Maybe it's something still to come. But relentless and what was the other Brian Callahan word that set off a post-game exchange? Resilient and relentless. That set off that post-game exchange that Brian Callahan and I had. We said, I know what you're doing, Paul. I'm going to take a breath here and compose myself, Paul, before I say something that I'm going to regret. Well, those are the words that are still, I'm sure, on the big meeting room wall. And so we'll see what Robert Saleh ultimately puts there, what the standard will look like from Robert Saleh. The energy and the physicality of your Tennessee Titans should pop on tape. He wants you to feel it when you're watching the game at home with the speed and the violence defining the identity. He says, not been a fast enough team. I mentioned the safeties earlier. Amani Hooker still has a role to play, but if you look at Xavier Woods, he can't be paired with Hooker back there. It's too slow of a combination. That's why they've got a young safety coming there, and Winston, who brings more speed but played better in the box than he did in coverage. And so speed and violence. He talked about being really impacted. Sorry, I'm flipping these pages right in front of your face a lot. Really being influenced by the Seattle coaching staff and mentors there. So we're going to see some Pete Carroll stuff here. I have talked to Scott McLuhan, who was a personnel executive there when Saleh was there. So I'll be writing about that. In terms of roster talent, he talked about opportunity, not a tear down, focus on process over results. We hear that from virtually every new coach, every new GM, process. And his analytics philosophy, he sounded a lot like a lot of new coaches now. It's a tool, it's a resource, it's something that can help, but context matters more than the numbers alone. So I wanted to run through a lot of the meat and potatoes of what Robert Saleh said at his introduction. If you're late and you weren't here at the beginning, the news of the day that I wrote is that Robert Saleh is going to hire a Nichols coach that will concentrate really strictly on that Nichols position. So I'll have a cornerback coach, a safeties coach, and a Nichols coach, with him broadly overseeing the secondary, obviously, as a defensive head coach. So two teams have dedicated nickel coaches. One had and no longer has, but that's a trend that the Titans are going to be part of very early. So I always felt like Callahan was overwhelmed. This is Turk talking. Always felt like Callahan was overwhelmed by the job from the start. I know it's only been one day of media, but I don't feel like Saleh's overwhelmed at all. Sounds very in command. Well, he's done it before. And I mean, they obviously have a striking contrast here in the experience between last coaching staff and this coaching staff. Callahan, and this is a mistake that the organization made, hired a first-time play caller with no experience and let him hire a first-time offensive coordinator with no play calling experience. Let him hire a first-time defensive coordinator with no play calling experience, and let him hire a first-time special teams coordinator with no coordinating experience. That is a ridiculous degree of inexperience. Now we're going the other way. Bones Fassel is back. Huge experience. This offensive coordinator has head coaching experience and a lot of offensive coordinating experience. Saleh's been a defensive play caller for a long time and has head coaching experience. It's the opposite. It's the opposite. And sometimes you go opposite just because the nature is to go opposite. Here they're going opposite because it's much smarter to go the other direction. Now, if you might have one element of that, a first-time offensive play caller or a first-time head coach, you usually surround a first-time head coach with a lot of experienced coordinators. So can Sweat be a full-time 4-3 DT? No, I don't think he can. I mean, we talked about this last week. Didn't have a chance to ask Saleh about it, but I'm sure he's not going to give us any strongly formed opinion about Sweat at this stage. But Mike Herndon wrote a great piece that's, a week ago at paulkuharsky.com saying that the one guy on the existing roster that's really not a fit to what Robert Saleh does is T'Vondre Sweat. And then you've got dedication issues with T'Vondre Sweat. So what are the odds that A, Sweat, finds Jesus and becomes a completely dedicated football player, and B, that Saleh then shifts the way he deploys his fronts to accommodate a guy who's very much a nose tackle when he hasn't generally played a 0 or a 1 technique player in his front. I think we're likely to see T'Vondre Sweat moved at some point. No, I think James Williams, DJ Bliss is saying, anyway, James Williams gets pushed outside in this new 4-3 scheme with his athleticism. Those outside guys are going to be bigger now, the ends. James Williams is probably a very good 4-3 outside linebacker, like a Keith Bullock type. Not completely. He's not Keith Bullock, but asked to do some of the things that Keith Bullock had to do. Somebody likes my scarf. Thank you. Do we think Saleh was the one to want Daboll first, or was it more Borgonzi? Seems like Borgonzi had the connection and Daboll called him first. Well, Daboll didn't do the calling. The Titans did the calling. I don't know. That doesn't matter. I think they both liked him. It makes perfect sense. We don't have to assign. Like they can work as a team here to get an end. The reputation that Amy meddles and is impulsive, yeah. How does Saleh research her reputation that she meddles and is impulsive and then come away convinced that she isn't going to meddle and be impulsive? Because the time she meddles and is impulsive isn't now on the happy day that you hire the coach and introduce him and he's on Good Morning Football and everybody's paying attention to the Titans and say, oh, it looks like a nice fresh restart in Tennessee. It's when something goes to shit in November. That's when she meddles and gets impulsive. Or next October, if things are still going poorly. Or in 4 years, when things have gone well for a while and there starts to be some strain between a successful Mike Borgonzi and a successful Robert Saleh, right? This is ridiculous. David Simon said, the Titans will never be relevant until new owners take over. Amy is trash. Except that 5 years ago, they were the number 1 seed in the AFC, and 2 years before that, went to the AFC championship game with these same owners. So were they irrelevant as the number 1 seed in the AFC? Were they irrelevant in the AFC championship game? I understand the pain and all of that, but I do not abide by, will not endorse, cannot echo your desire to just overstate things that are not factually true. Searching for questions here, thus a moment of silence. Alan is watching from Texas, and we welcome him. Here, I don't think that you need both. 777 Mac Dude says, I wouldn't mind Alec Pierce and Romeo Dobbs, then draft Elijah Sarrett from Indiana in the second round. They call him Waffle House because he's always open. Look, if you get Alec Pierce and Romeo Dobbs and Sarrett, then you've got 3 wide receivers. So that's eliminating Ridley. But so that you've got those 3 plus Io Manor plus DK plus Bryce Oliver, who you like. So now you're 6 deep, and there's a little bit too much to sort through. So that's too much of an investment. I don't think you need Alec Pierce and Romeo Dobbs. If you get Alec Pierce and you draft Sarrett or somebody in the same ballpark, I think you're pretty good. I would love that, but that's a huge dedication of resources, and I'd rather you take that Dobbs thing and go find one of the better edges who might reach free agency, which aren't a terrific group, but you've got to address things. And that list I just gave you, that would be a great deep group, but somebody and that would allow for injuries and all of that. But they've got so many needs. You've got to spread out some of those resources to also address quarterback and edge / end and maybe tight end and maybe running back, and to adjust this linebacker group that's now playing in a different alignment, and on and on and on. Vikings firing Kwesi. I mean, the timing is just remarkable. Now, they're not bringing in somebody else. They're just going to let their president run it. But, have the guy scout the Senior Bowl. Pretty weird. Some of these teams are just weird. Jason McDonald said he heard Rex Road ranting about Sean Payton throwing people under the bus, and I'm curious of your thoughts. And would something like that come into a Hall of Fame discussion for Payton? It might come up, but it's not going to be a stop sign or anything. I mean, I think Sean Payton's a Hall of Fame level coach. I think he's overrated. He's viewed as one of the great offensive masterminds of all time. I like my offensive masterminds to win more than one Super Bowl and to get to more than one Super Bowl. Is Morgan the highest drafted edge in Titans history? What number was Morgan drafted? Curse was drafted 16th. I don't remember where Morgan was drafted. Morgan was drafted in 2010. Is that correct? And the last first rounder, which is ridiculous. Got to believe as a fan that Amy has learned from previous mistakes. Yeah, sounds good. I mean, she's her dad's daughter, and Bud got progressively worse as things went on. Now, part of that was Bud's aging, but part of it was his eccentricities. So we don't know. Look, it's okay for them not to love Chig. I don't know why you guys love Chig as much as you do. Gary Grau asked, does it make sense to re-sign Chig with so much cap space and Helm on the team? Well, Chig was, I think by PFF, the worst blocking tight end in the league. So why do you guys like the worst blocking tight end in the league so much? I mean, he's a nice run after the catch player from time to time. But if they get better receivers, then they need less catches from the tight ends, and then you need more blocking from the tight ends. So they're allowed to replace Chig with somebody who's got a different and good skill set and be fine. And there are some tight ends who are coming around. So I'd be fine if they reached on Chig and wanted that. I'd be fine if they got a better blocking tight end. CRA, echoes this. We Titans fans get so brainwashed about a player being good. James Williams isn't a starter, nothing to get excited about. Maybe. Look, Robert Saleh and his people develop guys. So if James Williams can be developed, Saleh and his people will develop him. But yeah, is he a replaceable part? Yes. A 7th-round pick, right? If they turn him into something terrific. If not, let him go. But you're right. Titans fans do not like to let guys go. They like to claw on to a guy and think generally he's better than he is with a lot of guys. How do I feel about improvements on the field, Jim Stamos says. Well, I don't know who's on the field for the team, so that's a very hard thing to say. At this stage, on January 30th, where the coaching staff is almost in place, it looks like the Titans have done a very nice job assembling the coaching staff. What that means in terms of who they have on the field, we don't know. We don't know who they're drafting. We don't know who they're signing. All of that. A little mystery about Cam's shoulder, et cetera, et cetera. Feel optimistic that they will be well coached, well schemed. Now, who are they going to coach? And who are they going to scheme? Who the Titans coach and scheme is a very, very important part of this equation. You can't forget that. And the fact that Robert Saleh and Brian Daboll look and sound excellent at this stage does not erase the fact that they both failed in terms of wins and losses in their first stops as head coaches. They had bad circumstances, yes, and the circumstances here are lining up to be better. And so there is reason for optimism that their second go-rounds, Saleh's second go-round as a head coach, Daboll's first go-round as a coordinator after that experience will be better. There's no guarantee of anything. Their track records do not say this is absolutely going to work. What it says is, what this whole thing says is, Titans are setting up what they think is going to be a very nice situation, and let's see what they can do with it. Where's my pen? Wow, we've hit an hour. Jim Schwartz is not going to be in play for Tennessee Titans defensive coordinator. I could tell you that with quite a bit of authority. He got screwed in Cleveland. That's a mess with Monk, and I think him working to get in San Francisco, in Arizona. Is there one? There's some coordinator jobs open still. This isn't going to be the one that he gets. Good conversation. I appreciate you being here. Retweet and spread the word. Join paulkuharsky.com. And for all the insight, next level stuff. I've been doing really well on this coaching stuff. I feel good about my chances to have defensive coordinator news for you. Piece coming on the new offensive line coach, for which I've talked to many people. That'll be up at paulkuharsky.com before the day is out. Follow me on Instagram, my YouTube short. I'm doing Instagram, YouTube shorts, and all the places where you can find reels, posting something daily there with some of the level of insight that you get in an hour here. So catch me there. I appreciate you. If you are without power, or if you're helping restore power, Edley's Barbecue is giving you a free barbecue pork sandwich. Will Newman doing the right thing. Come by any of the local restaurants. Tell them your situation. Get a hookup. Come in, warm up. They will treat you right because they are great citizens in our community. I'm proud to be connected to them, and I'm proud to be connected to you. I appreciate your interest in my work, and I'll ask you, especially with the caliber of people who are doing a lot of the driving around Nashville, Tennessee right now, don't block the box, and be sure to lock your locks.